political prisoner who's in China right now. You cannot have his picture, and the number of textbooks or the number of religious books that you have, if you are caught with them, that also you're liable to be punished. And he's saying sometimes you may get punishments of from 10 to 20 years. He's just given an example saying that of one of his Ani tomore.
Mara aja.
Kira aja.
Aja tomo.
Aja tomo. Ani jire.
Ani jire.
Okay. He's saying his elder sister's friend. She's a nun, and she was caught with the picture of the. Okay. And she had a picture of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and she was caught. And he says he doesn't know where she's now. She's been caught, but doesn't know which prison or where she's been put. He's saying he would like to thank all the people who have been supporting the Tibetan cause and would urge them to still support the cause because it is a true cause. And he's saying that if people would like to visit Tibet, they should visit Tibet with an open eye. And they should not only be visiting Lhasa and the beautiful cities that the Chinese have fabricated, but rather should go to the villages because that is where you see the true face of Tibet.
As year goes by, we found that nowadays these refugees are telling us that they are not seeing any Chinese soldiers on the way. So we feel that Chinese government, they are just allowing the Tibetans to go out of Tibet as many as possible. And they try to settle the Chinese from the mainland China to Tibet, So these days, they are not stopping the refugees, They're just coming freely, So we found that there's some change of policies.
And there are also many Tibetans who are too old to go to a regular school. So in which case they are sent to the transit school where they are given a crash course in English, Tibetan, all other subjects.
Okay, we go. I see, and we have students who are taking a break. All in classes. Tin roof.
There's about 30 to 40 people living there. Steam bread.
Very good. Ooh.
Even then, I mean, you can't help but admire their courage, because as I've said before, it's taking your this life in your own hands. To escape means it's a sort of darkness. It's uncertain. You wouldn't. The person who decides to escape, he's making a decision where he doesn't know where the journey will end or how it will end, whether he'll be alive at the end of the journey.
She's saying. So she's saying that they were all cramped. About 76 people were there. They were all cramped in a sort of a tractor trolley kind of thing, and so they traveled for 13 days in that cramped condition. And then they were on the 13th day they were caught by the Chinese police. Ani, mommy simche. During that 1 month period, she's saying that they were barely given anything to eat, and whatever possession or whatever money they had, they were all confiscated by the Chinese. And during that period, she's saying that they were beaten various different ways. And she's saying that they used to make them hold hot water in their hands and keep on standing. And if they were not able to do that, they would be beaten by iron rods, which were heated up in fire. Anyway, and they're beaten on the hands. And he's saying that as a physician, as a practicing physician in Tibet, he has seen many sterilizations, you know, and he's saying that women are above 25 were sterilized, and he's saying that is a very devastating thing, and he wants people to make more strong appeals to the Chinese that they do not do forced sterilization and abortions.
Other refugees are, most of them are monks and nuns. And in the old days, we used to have many monastic universities where the monks can study Buddhism for a number of years, and they have a degree, Doctor of Philosophy like Geshe, and then after finishing that they meditate in the cave and the spiritual development, you know, so many facilities are there. But now Chinese have destroyed everything, and now even these days they have some monasteries there, but there's only for tourists, to as a showpiece, you know, to deceive the world, you know, that Tibetans are getting freedom of religion.
I mean, being a refugee, it's not nice. And from my own, this personal perspective, there's some degree of, shame attached to being a refugee, because being a refugee would indicate that you were not strong enough to defend your country, or you didn't have the skill to defend your country when the Chinese invaded Tibet.
So she informed her desire and the intentions to her parents that she wanted to study and go to India. So her parents found somebody else to take her to India. So that's how she came here. She's saying that her experience as a refugee in India is like she's been open to a whole new world in terms of Tibetan history. So one of his other friend, he and himself, their conditions were really bad. So they were brought down to Sikkim again, and their feet were amputated. Well, the one that's really struck me is the one that of this person called Taga. He came through Tibet and he was caught in a snowstorm, and during that period he lost one of his friends, and even though his feet were all had frostbite, he carried that body down to Kathmandu, and there his legs had to be amputated and he was helped by this foundation called the American Himalaya Foundation, and now he's here with us. He's training in the Tangapini school. Ratul. He was a monk in Tibet, in the Ratul monastery in Tibet. Okay, he was involved in one of the uprisings on Kichukepke. On 5th March 1988, he was involved in this uprising. He was a participant in that uprising. That was the first major demonstration that was ever done in Tibet after 19. So after 1987, the crackdown in 1987, 88 was the second largest one that the demonstrations were ever held. And during that demonstrations, the Chinese police they threw tear gas and nerve gas, all those things. So most of the people they sort of split up and ran away. And they were so he and some of his monk friends were up on top of the Chogang monastery on the terrace. So they had escaped there. So in fact they were up on the Chogang terrace and they were in fact hiding there from the security forces. And when the security forces came, okay. And in fact, the Chinese came up to where he was hiding. He and his friends were hiding, and they broke the doors and they asked them to come out. So all these monks they just went out in one big force, and the Chinese they sort of hit everybody. Most probably you must have seen this footage before, yes, many times, and maybe he was one of them. And after that he doesn't remember anything because he was clubbed by his police and. And he was taken to another jail in Chushu, where he was kept in prison for about 2 years and 2 months.
How old were you at the time?
He was 14 years old.
And tell me what you remember of that experience.
단데다 진짜 나왔습니다. 니마다 동 디동아 강부 찾아와도 정하는 룰. 이제 진짜 출래네 망미 막자 건졌는데 다든데 허허 바스날 투야스인데 저라 진짜 감상함다 살려.
Okay, and during the demonstration, it looks like he lost his one of his foot was fractured. So, and whenever he used to see a Chinese policeman, he had a feeling that was totally different. He was always feel angry and would not like to see a policeman.
And so, once you were out, how did you get out of prison, or how did that work out?
아니 간다 사입네 가서 내가 추슈네 간데스 로니데 나오니 되어라. 안테네 간데스 템 베네.
디네 로니다 다니자는 알레. 르 제네 콤바다 딘데 슝글레가다 딘데 랍데스라 딘데 주초가 말해. 소스랑 날 되고.
And after 2.5 years in prison, he was released, and he was not able to enroll in the monastery back again, and he was not able to get any work. And the only option that he had left was to go back to his home and stay there with his folks. Dane?
근데 날려 대가 그르주도 지구로 대. 강고대서 면제인데 제지. 근데 나 고주 권이 날려 두스는 저 라디오 잡아. 미시지 수전에도. 나 무슨 봤어.
And during all that period, when I was in the prison, he was not given any medication at all, and he was still limping, and he was was walking with the aid of a walking stick. The message that he wants to put forward to the rest of the people who are watching this film is to believe the facts of what's going on in Tibet, and to take this very seriously, and to put appeals to the UN.
예민네티에 따고 망고지 변화 친제 건조야 주요 좀 가시 올수 변화 배 초왕원의 기도 세워 대원의 누르를 간수 소화도 변 보냈습니다 영화스 동도 아 가리스 존십 카다 그게 시기 처와 화도네 대살 친제 이제 하고 먼저로 치시 돼 있어.
Okay. He's saying that people in the free world, those who have a chance to visit Tibet should visit Tibet. He wants them to visit Tibet, but not as a group, but visit there as individuals, and do not fall under the sway of the Chinese tourism, and they visit Tibet independently and see the facts for themselves. Don't visit the big cities, but go to the real remote areas. Go to the main villages, and you'll see the exact truth as to what's going on there. And he wants the people of the free world to at least have that experience, then come out of Tibet and say, okay, well, what is Tibet now? And because the picture that the Chinese are giving is not very rosy to the Tibetan people, and to the outside world it's just a matter of propaganda. That's all it is. So if you want to know, please visit Tibet as an independent.
Now true men's je zonga dagarana digina zonga dino dosun khasya nga da dosun khas da byoye ko tyobi onde na der dine nga pabyo je tobji zonga na be
Okay. So in 1992, 1st August, there was a big celebration, celebrating the Chinese in Tibet. And during that period, he was involved in this, putting up pamphlets and posters. And at the end of that month, in August, he was caught by the Chinese, and he was put into prison for 6 months in Loka, and he was sentenced for 4 years and 6 months rigorous imprisonment, and he was taken to Tabji Lera. Then he was brought to Lhasa, and Loshi Devre, and he was there in prison for 4 years, 6 months. He's saying when he was taken to Tabji for 6 months, in fact there were two of his friends also with him, so they were all involved in this thing, and during the 6 months they were rigorously tortured, and they were put in confinement cells, and they were questioned, interrogated, like there was no time for interrogations, like they could come at midnight and they would wake you up, and since there were three of them, each one of them maybe had a different story to tell, and the Chinese would interrogate at all times, and they used to use electric batons, and they used to tie them up, hang them up, beat them, and make them kneel on cold floors, and put stones underneath their knees. And these are some of the ways that they would torture to get things out. And he's saying in Tabji prison, he was for almost 2 years, he was put into he was made to work in a greenhouse where he and some of his friends were given the responsibility of planting vegetables, and they had to sell that vegetable as well, and they had to earn a certain amount of a limited number of money, and if they were not able to accumulate that, they would again be questioned and beaten and tortured and all those things. And Loni Jelani?
Loni Jelati Kalsorda Manzu Mishendala Ninguchigros, Mishenda legend that the Miss Condition legend and Lucy, legend of Manzuda Chelsea, more Juja and to Lamsu to Seje, Manzu Chelsea Chumba, Manzuruga Dinala, Kendall Mini Jelhazia.
Okay, he's saying in that prison there were like about more than 200 political prisoners. But basically in that prison there were more than 1,000 prisoners there. Out of which 500 were mostly monks and male prisoners. And the torture, one of the most that he's experienced was that during the warm days they would all be made to parade in the grounds for hours on ends, and asked to stay out in the sun, right, and expose their bodies to the sun. And during the winter times they would make them put waters on the floor, throw waters on the floor, the cold floors, and ask them to sit down on the water. Tango meeting means
Tango meeting la Sangha Tembelo.
Sangha Tembe.
Jeti mean Kesan.
There were two of his monks friends The first was Sanget Temple and Jela Kesang Tuto. And then another one was Kesang Tuto. The first one he said was he was beaten because of his political views and of his political statements that he had made, and he died. There are two people of his friends who died in the prison. Other one was taken for interrogations, and when he came back after 3 hours, he was basically half dead, and they could not administer any medicine or any of those things. So he died also. So two of his friends died that way in prison. He's saying, coming in exile and talking to you in this medium, he feels very, very happy, because he feels that if he was in Tibet, like many others who are still in Tibet, they would not be able to say a word, as he is able to express what he has, about his life in Tibet. So he wants the people to know that whatever he said is just a very, very, a short synopsis of what actually has happened. In fact, it is more than that, and he wants people to know that it is true. And so through this medium, he wants them to learn about his story and the facts of the story, and to be more supportive of the cause of Tibet.
The Chinese took their whole family under their they arrest them. The Chinese arrest them and took them to prison for 17 years. So on that time, her